Motown superstars, built Berry Gordy's empire, and died with nothing to show for it. The 12 names on this list are not ranked by chart positions. They are not ranked by how many records they sold, or how full the arenas were, or how many awards they received. They are ranked by a different measure. The measure of what they gave to one of the greatest empires in the history of American music, and what that empire gave them in return. Let us begin. Number 12, Barrett Strong. His name is Barrett Strong, and before I tell you what happened to him, I need you to understand what he did. Because the story of Barrett Strong begins where Motown begins. Not metaphorically, literally. It is 1959. A young man sits down at the keyboard inside a converted house on West Grand Boulevard in Detroit, Michigan. He is playing a riff, built loosely on something he heard in a Ray Charles record, and Berry Gordy is in the room. Benny Benjamin walks in and picks up the drums. A couple of musicians passing outside hear the sound through the window, come in, and ask to play. That is how it starts. And when Barrett Strong puts his voice on top of it, when he sings Money, that's what I want. What he has just created is Motown's first hit. The record sold over 1 million copies. It was covered by the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and dozens more. It earned millions of dollars in publishing royalties over the decades that followed. And then, and I want to be precise about what I am saying here, Barrett Strong's name was removed from the copyright. According to records at the United States Copyright Office, Strong was originally listed as a co-writer of the song. 3 years after its release, his name was taken off. It was briefly restored in 1987 when the copyright was renewed, then removed again. For 50 years, he received none of the publishing royalties on a song that his voice, his piano, and his session made famous. He also co-wrote I Heard It Through the Grapevine. He co-wrote War. He co-wrote Papa Was a Rollin' Stone. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2004. But Motown's first hit, the song that launched the empire, remained a source of dispute for the rest of his life. In 2013, speaking to the New York Times from a retirement home where he was living at the time, he said, "For 50 years, I had no idea about any of this. It was hidden from me." Barrett Strong died in January 2023 at the age of 81. He never fully resolved the question of who wrote the song that started everything. What he did leave behind, what cannot be disputed, is this: songs outlive people. He once said, "The real reason Motown worked was the publishing." The records were just a vehicle to get the songs out there to the public. The real money is in the publishing. And if you have publishing, then hang on to it. He understood that better than anyone. He just was not allowed to act on it. Number 11, Brenda Holloway. I want to tell you who she was before I tell you what the label decided to do with her. She was 17 years old when Berry Gordy signed her. She was from Watts in Los Angeles. And that matters because it made her Motown's first West Coast signing. The first. And her debut single was Not a Soft Start. Every Little Bit Hurts reached number 12 on the pop chart and was covered by the Spencer Davis Group, the Small Faces, and others who recognized immediately what was in that voice. She had a voice that did not ask for permission. It arrived and it stayed. The Beatles heard her. They heard her well enough that she opened for them on their North American tour in August 1965, including at Shea Stadium. Let that land for a moment. Brenda Holloway opened for the Beatles. That is not a minor footnote. That is a benchmark of how good she was. And then Motown made a series of decisions that, one by one, removed her from the picture she had helped paint. As a Los Angeles resident, with most of the rest of the Motown roster near the label's Detroit headquarters, Holloway felt overlooked and neglected during her years on the label. Albums were promised and shelved. Singles were held back. The promotional machinery that Motown had built, the machinery she helped justify, was pointed elsewhere. In 1967, she co-wrote a song with her sister Patrice. She called it "You've Made Me So Very Happy." It was her melody, her emotion, her voice. Before Motown released it, Berry Gordy was allowed to change a few notes on the musical composition, giving him a songwriting credit alongside Brenda, Patrice, and the song's producer. A year later, Blood, Sweat, and Tears recorded it. Their version went gold. She left Motown in 1968. She was 22 years old. Years later, she said simply, "Of course I should have stayed. I could kill myself for walking out. I was so stupid." Just right, Brenda Holloway was confused. She was not confused. She was 22, and she had signed with a label that told her what she was worth. Through every shelved album, every diverted credit, every year she spent on the other side of the country from where the decisions were being made. That is not confusion. That is what the industry looked like to a young woman who had already opened for the Beatles and still could not get her record released. If this name is new to you, if you did not know the name Brenda Holloway before today, that is not your fault. But it does not have to stay that way. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's one coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 10, Martha Reeves. I want to begin here with the specific fact that defines everything that comes after it, because it is the kind of fact that once you know it, reframes every song that follows. Martha Reeves did not come to Motown as a star. She came to Motown as an office worker, working for the label's A&R department. She answered phones. She kept the operation running. She was one of the capable, invisible people without whom the Motown machine would not have functioned. And then a session needed a backup voice, and Martha Reeves stepped into that studio, and the sound that came out of her ended the conversation about what she was for. Heat Wave, 1963. Nowhere to Run, 1965. Dancing in the Street, 1964. A song that became, over time, not just a hit, but a landmark. A civil rights anthem, a song that David Bowie and Mick Jagger would perform 2 decades later. A song that has been used in films, commercials, documentaries, and sporting events for more than 60 years and has still not exhausted its power. Martha Reeves gave that to the culture. If that song was in your house growing up, if it was part of your life before you ever knew this story, I need you to hold that, because the story of what came after is why this channel exists. Motown dropped the Vandellas in 1972, not with ceremony, not with a proper accounting of what had been built together. The contract ended and was not renewed. And Martha Reeves, who had come to that label as a secretary, who had given it some of its most enduring recordings, found herself without the infrastructure that had supported everything she had created. She has spoken publicly about signing Motown contracts without fully understanding what she was agreeing to. That there were things in those documents she was not told. That the standard Motown contract, which many of its artists signed very young and without legal counsel, contained terms that would not withstand scrutiny by someone who knew what they were looking at. She struggled in the years after Motown. She fought to find solid ground. The woman whose voice made dancing in the street what it is deserved not to have to fight that hard for that ground. Some names are remembered for what they gave the culture. The better question is, what did the culture give back? The music survived. The name should be spoken with the same weight as the records. Number 9, Paul Williams. Among everything on this list, this is the one where the word abandoned is not rhetorical. It is precise. Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks started singing together as children in a church choir in Birmingham, Alabama. They formed a group. They moved north. They eventually merged with the group that would become the Temptations, and by 1961, they were in Detroit, signed to Motown, recording the songs that would define an era. Paul Williams sang lead on Since I Lost My Baby. His voice is woven into every Temptations harmony from the earliest years. He was not a supporting figure. He was a founder, one of the 5 men who created something that the world still listens to. And then he became ill. The medical details are documented but incomplete. What is documented is that Paul Williams developed a chronic condition that caused him physical pain and that he turned to alcohol to manage it. His health declined. His ability to perform with consistency became unreliable. He was asked to leave the group in 1971, 2 years after he was unable to sustain the demands the touring schedule required. He was replaced by a singer who had, in the final months of Williams' time with the Temptations, been secretly traveling with them, learning the choreography, learning the harmonies, so that when Paul Williams could not go on, the show would continue without interruption. That is not how you treat a founder. Paul Williams died on August 17, 1973. He was 34 years old. I am going to say that again. The co-founder of the Temptations, the man who started singing with Eddie Kendricks in a church choir in Birmingham, who helped build one of the most celebrated vocal groups in the history of American music, died at 34. 2 years after he was no longer useful to the machine he had helped build. I know. I felt the same thing when I first fully understood this story. Take a second with it. Some of the other names on this list were failed by the system slowly, through neglect and misdirection and withheld royalties. Paul Williams was failed quickly. He was needed, then he was not, and then the support was gone. And the man who deserved to be cared for, who had given a decade of his voice and his health, had nowhere left to go. Number 8, Eddie Kendricks. Eddie Kendricks had one of the greatest voices in the history of soul music. That is not a tribute statement. That is a documented fact that you can verify right now by listening to any 30 seconds of his work. He co-founded The Temptations. He was one of their lead singers from 1961 until 1971. He sang the lead on The Way You Do the Things You Do, on Get Ready, and on Just My Imagination, Running Away With Me. Just My Imagination. I want you to think about that recording. The falsetto on that record is not a technique being demonstrated. It is a human being finding a sound that did not exist before he created it. By the time that song reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1971, Kendricks had already left The Temptations, seeking creative control that Motown had never given him. His solo career began slowly, 2 years of singles that missed the charts. Then 1973, when Keep On Truckin' reached number 1, and Boogie Down reached number 2, and it seemed like he had proven something. He had done it again, without the group, on his own terms. And then the industry moved on from him, and the royalties that his Motown years had generated, the money that his voice had earned, were not arriving the way they should have been. He sued Motown Records for withheld royalties. The suit was settled. The details were not disclosed. What was disclosed is this. In 1989, when The Temptations were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Kendricks and Ruffin were already performing together on reunion tours, not because they had received the industry's formal recognition of what they had built, but because they needed to perform to sustain themselves. They toured England. They toured the United States. They did what was necessary. In 1991, a doctor examining his voice discovered a spot on one of his lungs. In late 1991, Kendricks underwent surgery to have one of his lungs removed. He continued touring through the summer of 1992. He fell ill again in September. Eddie Kendricks died on October 5th, 1992, in Birmingham, Alabama, the city where he and Paul Williams had started singing together as children. He was 52 years old. The voice of Just My Imagination, 52 years old. And the industry still does not say his name the way it should. Number 7, the Funk Brothers, Jamerson. What Happened to the Funk Brothers is the most complete proof on this entire list that Motown was not just a record label, it was a machine. And machines do not acknowledge the parts that make them run. Jamerson, Earl Van Dyke, Benny Benjamin, Robert White, Jack Ashford, Joe Messina. These were the uncredited studio musicians who were the house band that Berry Gordy handpicked in 1959. They recorded and performed on Motown's recordings from 1959 to 1972. Not some of the recordings, virtually all of them. Jamerson, the bassist, was the uncredited bassist on most of Motown's hits in the 1960s and early 1970s. He played on nearly 30 #1 pop hits and more than 70 #1 R&B hits, more than any other bass player in both categories. Bass Player magazine has ranked him the greatest bassist of all time. Rolling Stone has ranked him the greatest bassist of all time. His bass line on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, which Gaye reportedly pulled him from a bar to play, bringing him into the studio where he performed the entire track lying on his back, is studied in conservatories around the world. The Funk Brothers produced more #1 hits than the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, and Elvis Presley combined. I need you to hold that for a moment, because I want to make sure it lands. More #1 hits than those four artists combined. In a converted garage on West Grand Boulevard, by men who were paid by the session. Sometimes as little as $25 per song. No royalties, no residuals. Motown did not list session musician credits on their releases until 1971. For more than a decade, the Funk Brothers were invisible on every record they made. And James Jamerson, the greatest of them, was said to be broke and bitter about his lack of recognition at the time of his death. He had been out of meaningful work for nearly 2 decades. His prized bass guitar, the instrument he called the Funk Machine, was stolen just days before he died. And there is one more thing I need to tell you, because it is the documented truth and it deserves to be documented here. In 1983, when Motown held its 25th anniversary concert, a television special called Motown 25, James Jamerson was not an honored guest. He was not invited backstage. He sat in the back rows of the bleachers. He watched the celebration of the empire he had built. From the back row, James Jamerson died on August 2, 1983, at the age of 47, from cirrhosis of the liver, heart failure, and pneumonia. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2000, 17 years after his death. A documentary about the Funk Brothers was made in 2002. It won 2 Grammy Awards. Everything came after. Nothing came while it could have helped the men who deserved it. Talent without documentation is just genius with no witnesses. The Funk Brothers had the talent. We are the witnesses now. Number 6, David Ruffin. I need you to hear what Marvin Gaye said about him. Marvin Gaye once said, admiringly, "I heard in his voice a strength my own voice lacked." That is what David Ruffin's voice was. Strength that even Marvin Gaye acknowledged he did not have. He joined the Temptations in 1964. Within a year, with Ruffin at the lead, the group hit it big with My Girl, Since I Lost My Baby, and Ain't Too Proud to Beg. He was not one of 5. He was the voice. He was the reason people who had never cared about the Temptations started caring. And the group knew it. And the group's management knew it. And Berry Gordy knew it. And then what happened next happened. His drug use caused the band to implode. He demanded special treatment. He began riding in his own mink-lined limousine instead of the group limousine. He demanded the group be renamed David Ruffin and the Temptations, as had been done with Diana Ross. He was officially fired in June 1968. And I will say clearly what most people choose not to say when they tell this story. What happened to David Ruffin after that firing was not only the consequence of his own choices, it was also the consequence of an industry that had given him everything he needed to believe he was indispensable, and then had no mechanism to help him when that belief collapsed. He was handed the lead on some of the greatest records of his era, and then he was let go. No structure, no support, no plan, just the door. In 1988, Ruffin told a judge he was penniless and living in a friend's mobile home outside Detroit. This was the voice that Marvin Gaye said possessed a strength his own voice lacked. In a mobile home, David Ruffin died on June 1, 1991, in a Philadelphia hospital. He was 50 years old. The cause of death was an adverse reaction to cocaine. He had just returned from a successful tour of England with former Temptations Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards. He had everything to look forward to, and then he didn't. Michael Jackson paid for his funeral. Aretha Franklin attended. Stevie Wonder attended. The industry showed up after. The industry did not show up when it would have made a difference. David Ruffin's voice was a gift. What was done with the man who carried it was not. Number 5, Tammi Terrell. You know this song. You have known it your whole life, perhaps without ever being told its name. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. It has been in films. It has been at graduation ceremonies. It has been played at the moment when someone needs to believe that nothing can stop them. You know the feeling of that song. But knowing the song and knowing what it cost to make it, those are two different kinds of knowing. Let me give you the second one. Thomasina Winifred Montgomery, known professionally as Tammi Terrell, was born on April 29, 1945, in Philadelphia. She signed with Motown in 1965. She was 20 years old, and when Berry Gordy paired her with Marvin Gaye, what came out of that pairing was some of the most intimate, searching human singing that Motown ever recorded. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Your precious love. If I could build my whole world around you. Ain't nothing like the real thing. You're all I need to get by. 7 top 40 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. On October 14, 1967, while performing Your Precious Love with Marvin Gaye at Hampden-Sydney College in Virginia, Tammi Terrell collapsed into Gaye's arms on stage. She was 22 years old. Doctors diagnosed a malignant tumor on the right side of her brain. And what Motown did next is the entry on this list I mentioned earlier. The one I said was not neglect. It was a decision. Motown downplayed the severity of her diagnosis while new material by Gaye and Terrell was still being released. Many of the singles released under their names were created by laying Marvin Gaye's vocals over recordings Terrell had made before her illness. Her image, her name, her voice from before she was sick, released while she was having brain surgery, released while she was losing her vision, her hair, her ability to walk. She underwent 8 brain surgeries over the course of nearly 3 years. By early 1970, she was confined to a wheelchair. She experienced blindness and hair loss and weighed only 93 pounds. Tammi Terrell died on March 16, 1970. She was 24 years old. Her mother was so furious with the way Motown had treated her daughter that she barred everyone from the label from attending the funeral, except for Marvin Gaye, who she felt was Terrell's closest genuine friend. Tammi Terrell's mother barred Motown from her daughter's funeral. That is not anger. That is a verdict, and it is one the record should carry. Ain't No Mountain High Enough was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. The woman who sang it deserved to still be alive to hear it. Number 4, Jimmy Ruffin. I want to say it with the clarity it deserves, because this is one of the names on this list where the song is known and the name is not. And that particular gap is the specific injustice I want to document here. The song is What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted. You know it. It has the quality of a question that everyone who has ever lost something already carries inside them, and the record simply gives it a voice. Jimmy Ruffin was the older brother of David Ruffin, who joined the Temptations. Jimmy had a different path. He signed with Motown separately as a solo artist. And in 1966, What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted reached the top 10, number 7 on the pop chart, number 6 on the R&B chart. It is one of the most emotionally precise records Motown ever released. And then Motown made a calculation. The calculation was, Jimmy Ruffin is a solo artist in a label built around groups. The Temptations have David, we have Marvin, we have Stevie, we have the Supremes. Jimmy Ruffin is talented. Jimmy Ruffin is not the priority. The follow-up singles did not receive the promotional support that the first hit would have needed to establish a sustainable career. The infrastructure that Motown had, the machine that could have made Jimmy Ruffin into a consistent presence on the charts, was pointed elsewhere. And Jimmy Ruffin, with one of the most affecting voices Motown ever recorded, had to eventually leave the United States to be properly heard. He moved to England, where the audiences understood what they were listening to. He died on November 17, 2014. He was 78 years old. He had spent the better part of his career being asked whether he was related to David Ruffin, rather than being known on his own terms for a record that should have established those terms permanently. The music survived. The name attached to the voice behind What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted has never received the weight it earned. Let it be given that weight now. Jimmy Ruffin. This name deserves to be in your memory after today. Number 3, Mary Wells. If you know Motown, if you know its earliest years, the years before the Supremes had their first number 1, the years when the label was still finding its sound, then you know what this name means. Mary Wells was the Queen of Motown. She was the first female star to emerge from the label. And she was, in the words of those who observed it closely, the person who held Motown together while everything else was still being built. She signed with Motown at the age of 17. The One Who Really Loves You, You Beat Me to the Punch, Two Lovers, and then, in 1964, My Guy, which peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The Beatles, on their first American tour that year, named Mary Wells as their favorite American singer. They brought her to England as their opening act. She was 21 years old. She had just had the biggest hit of her career, and she left Motown. The agreement that freed her from Motown not only cost her the label's production and promotional muscle, it deprived her of royalties from sales of her old material. Every time My Guy was played, every time it was licensed, every time someone new discovered it, the money went elsewhere. That was part of what she agreed to in order to leave. She did not know, at 21, what she was agreeing to. She recorded for other labels. She never again matched the commercial success of her Motown years. In 1990, she was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer. The treatment destroyed her voice. Since she had no health insurance, her illness wiped out her finances, forcing her to sell her home. Friends, Diana Ross, Mary Wilson, members of the Temptations, Bruce Springsteen, Rod Stewart, Aretha Franklin, made personal donations to help her pay her medical bills. And I want to say that clearly because it is the part of the story that reveals everything. The Queen of Motown needed her former colleagues to pass the hat to cover her medical expenses, while My Guy played on the radio, while the royalties from that song went to people and entities who were not Mary Wells. In 1991, she brought a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Motown for royalties she felt she had not received. Motown settled the lawsuit for a six-figure sum. That same year, she testified before the United States Congress to advocate for cancer research funding. "I'm here today to urge you to keep the faith," she said. "I can't cheer you on with all my voice, but I can encourage, and I pray to motivate you with all my heart and soul and whispers." Mary Wells died on July 26, 1992. She was 49 years old. The Queen of Motown deserved to die with a different story. She earned a different story. The music she made, the music that made Motown what it became, deserved to come back to her. This is the name I mentioned early in this list, the deliberate part, the part that was not oversight. What happened to Mary Wells was not an accident of an imperfect system. The royalties she was owed were documented. The contract she signed at 17 was exploited. The decision to settle for a fraction of what she was owed while she was dying and the label still held what she had earned was a decision, and it deserves to be called what it is. Number 2, Holland-Dozier-Holland. I am going to tell you what they built before I tell you what it cost them, because the scale of the first is the only thing that makes the second land the way it should. During their 5 years at Motown, Holland-Dozier-Holland wrote and produced 25 #1 hit singles. 10 of the Supremes' 12 U.S. #1 singles were theirs. Where Did Our Love Go? Baby Love, Stop, In the Name of Love, Reach Out, I'll Be There, You Can't Hurry Love, You Keep Me Hanging On. They were not contributors to the Motown sound. They were its architects. And then they asked a simple question. They asked Motown for an honest accounting of what that architecture had earned them. They had never been given a written contract. They had no access to Motown's accounts to verify their royalties. When they complained, Berry Gordy made verbal promises. Nothing changed. In 1967, they stopped submitting songs. Motown sued them for $4 million. Holland-Dozier-Holland countersued for $22 million, alleging conspiracy, fraud, and breach of fiduciary relationships. Because they were still contracted to Motown's publishing arm, they were barred from writing under their own names. From 1969 to 1972, the team behind 25 Motown #1s published their work under a pseudonym. The lawsuit was not settled until 1977, nearly a decade, for the right to be named as who they were. Lamont Dozier died on August 8, 2022. The full accounting he spent his life pursuing was never delivered. The music is permanent. What the men who made it received, that is the other record, and it belongs here too. Number 1, Florence Ballard. Before I tell you what happened to her, I need to tell you who she was, because that is the part that makes everything else matter. Florence Glenda Ballard was born on June 30th, 1943, in Detroit, Michigan. She was the 8th of 13 children. She grew up in the Brewster Douglas housing projects, the same housing projects as Diana Ross and Mary Wilson. She entered a talent show in 1958. Mary Wilson was there. They promised each other, if either of us is ever asked to join a group, she'll call the other. Florence Ballard was the one with the voice that made people stop. Mary Wilson compared it to Aretha Franklin and Etta James. It was deep, authoritative, completely her own. And then Florence Ballard did something that almost no one remembers. When Berry Gordy presented the group with a list of possible names, it was Florence Ballard who looked at the list and chose Supremes. She named the group. She named what became one of the most successful acts in the history of popular music. Her voice started them. Her choice named them. She sang on 16 top 40 singles with the Supremes, including 9 number 1 hits. And then Berry Gordy made a decision that was personal and professional and financial and has been analyzed for decades. Ballard's vocals were deemed too soulful for the crossover white audience Gordy was targeting. Ross's voice, he claimed, was better suited. But many observers have noted that Gordy and Ross had entered a romantic relationship and that this relationship shaped the decision about who would lead the group. Ballard was removed from the Supremes in 1967. As part of her settlement leaving Motown, she was forbidden to mention that she had been in the Supremes. She handed her settlement money to an attorney, who subsequently faced embezzlement charges. She signed with ABC Records. The singles did not succeed. She was dropped by ABC in 1970. In July 1971, Ballard sued Motown for additional royalty payments she believed she was due. She sought $8.7 million. She lost the case. Shortly afterward, her marriage broke down. Her home was foreclosed. She moved into her sister's house. She struggled with alcoholism, depression, and poverty, and was living on welfare when she died. And whether the decision to remove Florence Ballard from the Supremes, the woman who named the group, who sang on 9 of their number 1 records, who gave that group the deep vocal anchor it needed, was made purely for business reasons, or for reasons that had nothing to do with who was the better singer, I think you already know what the honest answer to that question is. On February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard entered a hospital in Detroit, complaining of numbness in her extremities. She died the next morning from a blood clot in her coronary artery. She was 32 years old. 32 years old, on welfare, in Detroit. The woman who named the Supremes. She was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Supremes in 1988, 12 years after her death, at an age when she should still have been performing. And I need you to hold what that means. The recognition came. It came 12 years too late to do her any good. It came to a woman who had died at 32, in poverty, having been told by a court that what Motown owed her did not need to be paid. Recognition without accountability is not justice, it is paperwork. Florence Ballard deserved better from the industry she helped build. She deserved better from the group she named. She deserved better from the system that used her, and then, when she became inconvenient, arranged for her to simply disappear. The music survived, the name survived, but Florence Ballard, the person, did not survive what the industry did to her. This name deserves to be spoken. Florence Ballard, the woman who named the Supremes. Let it be said clearly. Finally,